radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 147, recorded on Friday, April 25th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we're going to discuss all of the horrific things that have been Trump's immigration policy.
And Trump's everything policy.
Yeah. Let's do it!
You can do it, baby. I love you so much. Magic. And it's bad news. Bad things are happening. Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, I didn't do it. Boom. Didn't do it.
So I want to actually preface this, Jason. I know I told you right before we started recording, but I have to say I lied about 5 seconds ago when this was all of the things with Trump's immigration policy.
Sure.
Because there was so much stuff as I was trying to make this thing.
Hey, you tried to mock me about the tariffs and changing every day.
I physically could not.
Shit.
I physically could not keep all this stuff in. There are so many more things I want to include, so just please be aware we're going to miss a ton of details and a ton of stuff because of time, but we'll include tons of links and resources in the show notes that you can also do some further reading and listening below.
But you won't, you lazy bastards.
So apparently this is going to be like, this whole month of us is doing like a final 100 days review of Donald Trump. You did the economy and how horrible that was. And we're going to do his second biggest issue today, which is immigration.
Basically the things that got him elected.
Yep. And I wanted to start today with a statement from one of America's most courageous fighters
Sure.
that we could have ever hoped for. You know, it's not the hero that we wanted, but it's the hero we deserve. Senator Lisa Murkowski.
From Alaska.
So let's see what she had to say about the current situation we're in.
What are you going to have to say to people who are afraid? Or who represent people who are afraid? We are all afraid. Okay? It's quite a statement. But we are, we're in a time and a place where I don't know. I certainly have not. I have not been here before. And I'll tell you, I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice because retaliation is real, and that's not right. But that's what you've asked me to do. And so I'm going to use my voice to the best of my ability. And sometimes it will be viewed in a way that, well, that's pretty confrontational. And other times it's going to be using my mother's charm that I learned as a young girl and in direct communication with those that I have made relationships with and am able to affect some change that way. But I've got to figure out how I can do my best to help the many who are so anxious and are so afraid.
That clip, of course, recorded from inside Donald Trump's asshole.
You know, she's just afraid, Jason. We also should point out that Senator Murkowski could leave the Republican Party anytime.
She's being held hostage.
So there you go. We are in a place right now where Republicans are terrified of what's going on.
She must have been in a bunker deep within the earth based on the sound quality of that clip.
Also, I will say, for a minute 30, almost 2 minute clip, that is one of the most elongated, just dragging answers. I'm like, oh my God.
I'm going to use my mother's charm that I learned as a little girl.
Yeah, that was concerning.
What?
Yeah, I included this because I wanted to show you how far we have fallen to the point where we now have Republican senators terrified of what's happening.
Can't speak out because of reprisals.
Yeah.
The hallmark of an authoritarian regime.
Well, and that's a good segue because we're going to talk about that authoritarianism today while discussing Trump's immigration policies. Like I said, we do not have time to cover everything, but what I want to talk about are three major things. Trump's first supposedly big win, his war against Trendy Aragua, and Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the story surrounding him.
So you didn't just find one article to read the whole time?
No, I didn't.
Well.
I have so many. I read so much. So let's start with Trump's first big win. I'm going to take you back to the yesteryear of January.
All the way back to January 2025.
Did I rub off on you or something? Where is this goofiness coming from? I'm not
even drinking.
I'm not opposed to this. I wasn't prepared for this. One of the first actions the Trump administration took was immediately rushing 2 military aircraft carriers to Colombia in January to deport undocumented migrants from the country. Now, this wouldn't have been anything really new. According to U.S. reports, Colombia accepted 475 deportation flights from 2020 to 2024, with 124 being accepted last year alone. What made this different, though, was that Trump used military aircraft with numerous reports of degrading treatment and abuse towards its riders. Colombian President Gustavo Petro said, quote, "A migrant is not a criminal and must be treated with dignity that a human being deserves. That is why I returned the U.S. military planes that were carrying Colombian migrants. In civilian planes, without being treated like animals, we will receive our fellow citizens." Because that's how usually things were done.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about this in the tariff episode because this actually led to a brief tariff war between the U.S. and Colombia.
Correct. Brazilian, Guatemalan, and Colombian officials said there were many reports of abuse, denial of bathroom breaks, and intentional lack of sleep. Petro then canceled the authorization for these flights to land and told them to turn back to the U.S. Trump then responded by ordering a 25% tariff on all Colombian incoming goods, which he raised to 50% a week later, like you were just saying. Mm-hmm. Now here's where we didn't cover it at the last episode. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the
son of Cuban immigrants, Marco Rubio,
also authorized restricting the visas of numerous Colombian government officials and their families who, quote, interfered with plane operations. Not long after, Colombia accepted the planes of migrants, and after a deal was made, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, quote, "Today's events make it clear to the world that America is respected again." However, to make things even dumber, this was all about 200 people. We did this whole thing for a couple weeks and got into a trade war over 200 people.
And not even that they didn't want to take them back, but they didn't want to take them back
abused
and looking like a show of military force from the United States.
Correct. And since Trump was using C-17 military transport planes to carry these out, the total cost of this was nearly $800,000. If done through normal deportation procedures like ICE has done numerous times, it would have been about an eighth of the cost. So these costs were incurred because the Trump administration was trying to deport as many people as fast as possible, regardless of process or literally the law. So for all the conservatives and libertarians who shout, "We have to be worried about the budget, man," Trump was wasting millions of taxpayer dollars in the most inefficient way possible to literally make a political spectacle out of mistreating and deporting people.
Yeah, well, like we talked about before the election, this plan will cost trillions.
Oh, yes.
To carry out. And it's going to destroy our economy in the process. And it's inhumane and just ethically wrong. But, you know, memes, Trump funny, vote yes.
Well, that's one thing I really wanted to include like a montage and a whole section about this as well. I didn't include anything about like the propaganda that they were putting out during this thing. We'll get to it, but like I didn't include how the White House put out like an ASMR video of them reading off their deportations and their deportees. I didn't include how Kristi Noem made a trip to El Salvador to make some kind of like tough guy video in front of a cell full of deportees of innocent people.
And I'm sure that was widely received by not just conservatives, but like average Americans probably love it.
Yes.
Because we're a country of assholes. I think it's time we all just kind of admit that. It's evident in our justice system, which is purely vengeance-based, as we talked about in a previous episode. It doesn't have anything to do with reform. It's all about just dehumanizing people. And now we're just taking it even a step further. And I'm terrified of where this is going to go. And I just don't think people give a shit. The average American thinks these people deserve it because they did something wrong, because they're less than human. And I don't know if I want to live here anymore. I mean, we're just a nation of a majority of just scumbag assholes. And I just don't know how to accept that or how to live with that. And I know it's the truth because it's not just conservatives. It's not just people that think of themselves as Republicans. It's people that think, that don't care about politics at all. But those ads like, oh, this person's soft on crime, they let this, those all work.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, you could make an ad that's like, I am going to literally execute everyone in prison, and people would love you for it.
Yeah.
And you compare that with the rest of the world, well, other than some of the countries we're about to talk about, but the rest of the first world, countries that have the money to spend on rehabilitating prisoners and actually care about what does the science say about treatment of people in prison and what's the best way to actually make them functioning members of society again, that have great prison systems and get a lot out of it. And it's not about punishing people. And you look at the United States, which is just a warehousing system, and people get brutalized, and we consider that to be justice. I don't know. And it's even going to get worse. What we're talking about here today is even worse because these are people that didn't even really do anything.
Well, we'll get to that.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
The whole thing with Colombia was just the first thing that happened. What many of you probably now know as recently happening was the war against Tren de Aragua. And I want to just run through what happened and explain how insane this actually is. On March 15th, the Trump administration announced that they will be invoking the Alien Enemies Act to carry out mass deportations of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Quick side note about the Alien Enemies Act, by the way. This act was actually originally passed in 1798 by John Adams. And it's only been invoked 3 other times in U.S. history. During the War of 1812.
Dirty Canadians.
World War I.
Dirty Germans.
World War II.
Dirty, well, mostly Japanese, but also
Jesus.
Germans again.
But keep that in mind, this was a wartime law used during war. And actually, you can still look it up. It's on our books today, and I'm going to quickly quote a large section of it for you to read what it actually says. Quote, whenever there is a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, or any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetuated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government, and the President makes a public proclamation of the event, all natives, citizens, denizens, or subjects of the hostile nation or government being of the age of 14 years and upward, who shall be within the United States and not actually naturalized, shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as enemy aliens. Also, Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually invoked the Alien Enemies Act to justify the internment of German, Italian, and Japanese residents during World War II.
And mostly Japanese descendants who were actually naturalized citizens, but we didn't care because they looked different.
Correct. So, when we're talking about the history of, U.S. concentration camps, it was this act that did it.
Yeah, and you can go all the way back to our episode on When the Emperor Was Divine if you want that whole story from the Japanese internment camps, because that's what that episode is about.
Correct. But now let's fast forward to present day. Well, present year at least. In their proclamation, the Trump administration said, quote, Tren de Aragua is a designated foreign terrorist organization with thousands of members, many of whom have unlawfully infiltrated the United States and are conducting irregular warfare and undertaking hostile actions against the United States.
We're all veterans of the Tren de Aragua wars.
And later on, the proclamation states that Tren de Aragua is perpetrating, attempting, and threatening an invasion or predatory incursion against the territory of the United States. So literally it's them saying, do you see? They're doing the war against us.
Yes.
And that's basically what it is. We are, I guess, at war with a South American gang.
They're attacking us by land.
The country of the United States, I guess, we didn't declare war. We just said war was declared. We don't know who declared the war, but we are in said declared war against a South American gang. But Joe, how can we be at war with a gang? That'd be stupid. You're right, it is. Well, according to the Trump administration,
I think that was supposed to be my line.
I mean, it can be.
But Joe, how can we be at war with a gang?
You're an idiot. You should know better.
Oh, damn it.
According to the Trump administration, though, we're not actually at war just with Tren de Aragua. We're actually at war with the entire country of Venezuela. Venezuela. Because from the same proclamation, it says, quote, Tren de Aragua operates in conjunction with Cartel de los Soles, the Nicolas Maduro regime-sponsored narco-terrorism enterprise based in Venezuela. Tren de Aragua is closely aligned with and indeed has infiltrated the Maduro regime, including its military and law enforcement apparatus. So according to the Trump administration,
Now we're at war with Venezuela?
for members of Tren de Aragua to come into the United States, they are saying that is Venezuelan military action against the U.S. on U.S. soil. That is what they're saying. This is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. Shortly after that, although there is some reporting that these actions actually were taken prior to the proclamation being released, the Trump administration detained 238 Venezuelan migrants and flew them to be held in Texas before quickly being whisked away to El Salvador's Terrorism Confinement Center, or as we'll reference it for later on, CCOP.
It's like Epcot, but really shitty.
Yes.
Or just like
Epcot.
Epcot.
I was going to make the joke, man. Oh. And this is where many of the arguments of due process you may have heard come from. To be clear, while certain individuals could have been members of Tren de Aragua, the Trump administration did not provide any evidence of this in court. They simply made the assertion, grabbed the people off the street, and then sent them to a torture prison in El Salvador. I also want to include that 60 Minutes did a investigative piece on all these people as well, and they found, I think it was like 75% of them had no criminal record, and of like the 25% that actually did, it was all for non-violent offenses, and I think like some like very like petty theft or maybe like trespassing or something like that, and only like 2% or like 10 people actually had legit like violent criminal records.
They're playing the long game, Joe.
Well, you hold on, man. We're not even there yet.
They're still in the infiltrate stage.
And I wanted to...
First, they have families, and then they raise those kids to hate the United States. And then they go to all the birthday parties and the sports games of all the other kids, and they start telling the other kids that America is the great Satan. And then they start joining like auxiliary clubs and like moose lodges, and they infiltrate those, and they get those people to hate America too. And then before you know it, bam,
communism.
and then we have free health care. Damn it.
So I wanted to quickly talk about two of these individuals. And forgive me if I butcher these names. The first one is Jersey Reyes Barrios, a professional soccer player from Venezuela who was initially detained and tortured by the Maduro regime for protesting it. He sought asylum in the U.S., and he came here legally through proper channels. I need to be very clear about that.
Troublemaker.
He had no criminal record, but Barrios was accused of being a member of Tren de Aragua because he had a tattoo of a soccer ball with a crown, rosary, and the word Dios, or God, made to look like the Real Madrid logo, which is a Spanish soccer team.
See, that's exactly what a terrorist would do, Joe.
Additionally, the Department of Homeland Security said that he had Facebook posts from 10 years ago with gang signs similar to Tren de Aragua, although those were later revealed to be commonly known rock and roll hand gesture and him signing I love you in sign language.
That's a gang sign. Yep, going to prison.
When DHS was asked about his tattoo not being actual evidence, they responded by saying he had other tattoos that related him to Tren de Aragua, but refused to say what they were or show any pictures of them. That's it.
Yeah, but trust us.
He is literally being tortured in
Yes,
El Salvador, and that is it.
Yeah. And the thing is, right, if you were a member of one of these gangs and say you didn't want to be anymore and you knew it was really bad if you would try to leave and stay because, you know, you and your family would be murdered, you might, I don't know, come to America and
Seek asylum?
seek asylum. That might be what you would do if you didn't want to have anything to do with that kind of life. Just saying.
The other I want to talk about is Andre Hernandez Romero, a gay makeup artist who sought asylum in the U.S. He also did not have a criminal record and also already had his first asylum hearing where his lawyers said the government considered his fear as credible, but of course he was deported anyway because he had tattoos and posted something that linked him to the gang as well.
All of the gay makeup artists that are in
Yep.
the violent criminal gangs.
DHS provided his tattoos of 2 crowns as evidence. His lawyer had this to say about them. Quote, "These are tattoos that not only have a plausible explanation because he is someone who worked in the beauty pageant industry, but also the crowns themselves were on top of the names of his parents, and the most plausible explanation for that is that his mom and dad are king and queen in his life." DHS also accused him of posting things that linked him to the gang. 60 Minutes reviewed his posts on social media going back a decade, and posts included photos of him with makeup brushes and a bejeweled crown.
A gang crown and a gang makeup brush.
I cannot stress enough. That's it. Like, this isn't me like not doing research or not reading or, not looking at the court. Like, this is what they made in court.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like anything with a crown they're just saying is 100% gang related.
I guess, I don't know. I also include a note here that Philip Hosinger, a photographer for the Time magazine, said he heard Romero say, quote, "I'm not a gang member. I'm gay. I'm a stylist." Apparently he cried for his mom as he was being slapped and had his head shaved, according to Hosinger.
That's ethical treatment of fellow human beings.
So let me get this all straight. The Trump administration abducted and sent hundreds of people to a terrorist prison in El Salvador, which is infamous for its torture, abuse, and deaths. Over 150 people died in that prison just last year alone, without any due process or providing evidence that these individuals deserve to be detained in the first place. And now going to what you said just a little bit earlier, Jason.
Mm-hmm. And nobody gives a shit because they deserve it.
The Trump administration knows they are detaining these people without criminal records. When several of the deported individuals sued due to infringement on their rights, because this is that, the Trump admin argued in federal court that their lack of a criminal record was evidence that they were actually criminals.
Mm-hmm. That's how they get you.
This is directly from their arguments in the court docket. While it is true that many members of the Tren de Aragua gang removed under the AEA, that's the Alien Enemies Act, do not have criminal records in the United States, that is because they have only been in the United States for a short period of time. The lack of a criminal record does not indicate they pose a limited threat. In fact, based upon their association with Tren de Aragua, the lack of specific information about each individual actually highlights the risk they pose. It demonstrates that they are terrorists with regard to whom we lack a complete profile. So them doing the right things and not being threats to our society is justification to say they are threats to our society.
Yeah.
So that's great. We are officially in fascism land. I don't know what you want to call it, but this is atrocious. Judge James Boasberg, the one overseeing this case, ruled against the Trump administration and ordered flights in transit to be turned around and new flights to not take off. And one of the most horrifying things about this story is that the Trump administration actually refused to turn their planes around and continue to hand them off to El Salvador.
Well, it's kind of the Supreme Court's fault for, saying that Trump was immune to any prosecution for official acts as president. What the fuck are they going to do about it?
It's almost like there's consequences to these decisions being made. The Trump admin argued since the people were already handed over to El Salvador, they were outside of the U.S. jurisdiction and there was nothing they could do. Even though Judge Boasberg explicitly stated to not turn anyone over to El Salvador for this exact reason. And just to add salt to the wound, President of El Salvador and self-proclaimed world's coolest dictator, Nayib Bukele, tweeted out, "Oopsie, too late," with a laughing emoji in response to the situation. So now, unfortunately, we'll have to skip ahead a bit due to time. But after initially allowing the Trump administration to use the AEA, things ended up getting so hectic in the legal process that eventually the Supreme Court for once worked later than usual and put out a 7-2 decision at 1 a.m. last Saturday, stating that the Trump administration must not take any action to deport any more Venezuelans under the Alien Enemies Act.
And if you want to know who are the two that are completely fine with a unconstitutional authoritarian regime, to no one's surprise, it's the Harlan Crow justices, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito.
So we're 2/3 of the way done with this, Jason. Let's move on to the third. The last thing I want to talk about is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is someone else who was deported to El Salvador wrongfully and has become one of the most talked about stories in the nation over the last couple of weeks.
And his story is just one of thousands.
Correct. So let's go through it as well so you can really know what is happening. Abrego Garcia was born and raised in Los Naujales, El Salvador. And for years, he and his family were threatened and extorted by one of El Salvador's most notorious gangs, Barrio 18. And due to those threats and extortions from Barrio 18, he fled El Salvador and began to live in the United States with his brother in Maryland. In 2019, he applied for asylum after ICE detained him on suspicion of being a gang member or related to MS-13. Their evidence was his bull's hat, the hoodie he wore, and the testimony of a confidential informant. However, the courts found that this was not credible evidence, and ICE stopped pursuing his detention in relation to MS-13. After that, the court found that Abrego Garcia did face a credible threat if deported to El Salvador, but since he missed the one-year residency deadline, he was granted a withholding of removal, which barred deportation specifically to El Salvador instead of being granted asylum. Everything was fine. He did nothing wrong after that. I gotta be very clear about this. He has a wife and kids, and I think he works at a machine shop.
Exactly what you would expect from a violent gang member that is invading our country, here to kill us all.
Exactly. But on March 12th, ICE pulled Abrego Garcia over on his way home from work and detained him. His wife tried to locate him, but was unsuccessful since they shuffled him around so quickly.
And this has happened, you hear this in a lot of these stories, of people just being moved by truck from prison to prison to prison to prison to prison. This is an old technique used to basically torture prisoners. They call it diesel therapy. And it's what they do when they have a prisoner that's like a troublemaker. And by troublemaker, I mean usually someone who's giving legal advice to other prisoners, which of course the justice system hates.
Yep.
And they'll usually take those people and do that and just constantly shuffle them around to the different prisons. They don't let them sleep. They don't let them eat on a regular schedule. They just have like cold sandwiches, and they just shuffle them around the country so that they don't have any contact with their family. And it's basically designed to try to break their will.
His wife and brother actually only located him when they recognized him in news articles about Trump deportees to El Salvador. His wife immediately filed a lawsuit claiming that the Trump administration violated Abrego Garcia's withholding of removal, which that's what they did.
Yes.
I also have to be very clear with this whole...
They did that shit.
Yeah. I have to also be very clear with the situation. They could have also deported him under the law with due process. They could have done that because he did not have an official asylum status. He did not have a pathway to citizenship. The only thing they couldn't really do was send him to El Salvador by law. That was it. And they did the one thing they were not allowed to do. And while in court, the Trump administration continued to provide zero evidence that Abrego Garcia was actually a member of MS-13. Instead, they claimed that since he was already in El Salvador, the United States doesn't have any jurisdiction over him, just like many of the others. And to make things even worse, during this time, the Trump administration admitted in court multiple times that they deported Abrego Garcia by mistake. One example was from Robert Sena, acting field office director for enforcement and removal operations. He wrote this in his testimony, quote, "Through administrative error, Abrego Garcia was removed from the United States to El Salvador. This was an oversight, and the removal was carried out in good faith based on the existence of a final order of removal and Abrego Garcia's purported membership in MS-13. The Supreme Court ended up ruling against the Trump administration and ordered them to, quote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's return, which then turned into a giant clusterfuck over what the hell facilitate means. During that time, Trump held a televised meeting with Bukele where they straight up lied numerous times about this being a mistake. They claimed that Abrego Garcia should be deported because he's a terrorist and won't be allowed back. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in her definition of facilitate was that if El Salvador actually released Abrego Garcia, the U.S. would provide a plane at least. How thoughtful of her. And then when reporters asked Bukele if he would actually bring Abrego Garcia home, he chuckled and said, "How can I return him to the United States? Would it be like I smuggle him into the United States? Of course, I'm not going to do it."
Coward, he didn't do a voice.
As Jon Stewart said on his episode of The Daily Show, they're fucking enjoying this.
Yes.
Because when you look at this video, you just see glee on their faces.
Yeah, no, they love this.
It is the most shit-eating grins ever, as they are just saying, well, there's nothing we can do. Oh, well.
Yeah, this is like porn for scumbag Americans. It really is. Like, they love this shit. We are violating people's human rights.
And sending people to torture prisons.
Yes, they love it. They can't get enough of it. We're not evidenced by we ain't doing shit.
And of course, Trump said on tape that El Salvador needs to build 5 more prisons to take in all the, quote, homegrowns, aka American citizens.
Yes.
That Trump wants to send to a fucking gulag.
Yes, and do not think that that is hyperbole or something that will never happen. I guarantee you they are going to try to deport U.S. citizens to these South American dungeons.
Correct. Jason, I try really, really hard because I get so sick of the conservative argument that, Democrats are just being emotional and hyperbolic and, just they're throwing a hissy fit and whatever nonsense, right? So I try really, really hard to keep as grounded as possible and not to be overly hyperbolic. This is Hitler shit, man.
Yes. This is just farming out the concentration camps to another country because we don't really want them here because it's kind of icky. And again, Trump is completely immune from any blowback that would ever happen from any of this. So why wouldn't he do it?
God.
I mean, it's not immune to but
Jesus Christ.
I probably have to take that out again.
Yeah. And while this was all happening, Republicans were trying their damnedest to smear Alberto Garcia, saying that he wasn't a family man, that he is a hardened criminal, and that we shouldn't even care about him anyway.
Right. He's not even human.
Here is Fox News' Greg Gutfeld saying that exact thing. If you ever wanted a reason to punch Greg Gutfeld in the face, here it is.
I don't need another one, but...
Well, you're going to get one.
Now we're deporting hundreds of thousands, and surely one or two might not be criminal. However, compare the error. In one of these errors, Americans don't die. At worst, a guy gets sent to a country he doesn't want to go to. You know what? I can live with that.
Into a prison camp, not just out into the wild.
Look, I'm sorry, Jessica. I understand your concern, but I refuse to care about one person who's an illegal alien when the mental shelf space that I have is now reserved for victims of crime, which I've been talking about for years. This manufactured narrative, family man, father of three, coming from the media, who with the same intensity talked about having children was bad for the climate, are now telling us that when you have children, you are now a pillar of the community. If that guy was a white American citizen, they would just call him a MAGA extremist.
I think he's projecting just a little bit.
Oh, you think? So there it is. Yeah, they don't care. They do not care one bit if our government is sending people to literal torture prisons.
Yeah, fuck those Jews. Illegal immigrants.
And also, you heard him. He doesn't care if they're innocent. Mm-hmm. He doesn't care.
No, doesn't give a shit. They're not human. Their life does not have any value to Greg Gutfeld and people like him. None. They're not white American citizens, the people that he cares about. He even admitted it at the end of that clip.
Yep.
The white people are the only people that he cares about. If you're brown, go get fucked. Go to a fucking gulag in South America and die. Give a shit if you're innocent, if you didn't do anything. You shouldn't have been in my white country.
Yep. It's fucking terrible, man. This is also when Trump infamously posted his hand of Abrego Garcia picture. I don't know if you saw this going around.
Yeah, the doctored image.
Yeah, I threw in there for yours if you wanted to see it yourself. But it also came with the post, "This is the hand of the man that the Democrats feel should be brought back to the United States because he's such a, quote, fine and innocent person. They said he is not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed onto his knuckles.
No, he doesn't.
And two highly respected courts found that he was a member of MS-13, beat up his wife, etc. I was elected to take bad people out of the United States, among other things. I must be allowed to do my job. Make America great again."
Says the rapist and felon.
Yep.
Donald Trump.
And you're right, Jason. No, his hand does not say he is a part of MS-13. It is not tattooed on his hand. And even then, if we have the most charitable response or take from this whole thing, they were trying to show that his knuckle tattoos that he has, and it's of a marijuana leaf, a smiley face, a cross, and a skull. He's trying to say those are somehow he's trying to numerology this thing to say
right, the marijuana is M and the smiley face is S,
but the cross is a 1, and then there's a hidden 3 in the skull.
Right, they were there to cover it up. And again, even if you want to take all that at face value and say okay, yes, this man was a member of MS-13.
Yes, which also I just want to also
there's no proof for it.
There was no proof, and and that is a bald-faced lie that there are no courts that said he was a member of MS-13. Right. They found the exact opposite.
But even if you want to take that and say yes, definitely this guy was a member of MS-13 in El Salvador. He has been in the United States for years, has a family, has a job, has no criminal record. What the fuck is what is the gang doing here?
Right.
It seems like they're just wasting their goddamn time.
Well, and also, I'll take even one step further, which is, let's say, given the whole thing where maybe he is committing crimes, we just don't know about it. right? Okay, then go through the proper channels and don't just disappear people. If you have evidence, show them in court. Don't just disappear people. We don't disappear people anymore. That's not what we're supposed to do anymore as a country.
We are the bad guys. I mean, there's no
100%.
There's no way around
like
that.
I said, this is Hitler shit, man.
Yeah. And I mean, everything that we're doing now on the world stage, literally everyone's like, you know what? China's not that bad. Like, now that we're doing the same shit, that we're like, oh, well, you can't trust China because they do all these civil rights abuses.
Well,
And we're doing the same fucking thing, and we're assholes on top of it. Everyone is moving to China. Like, they're all making trade deals with China now because the U.S. is being so fucking stupid.
correct.
Like, we are single-handedly, like, moving China to be the new world superpower just from how bad of a president Donald Trump is. And again, honestly, we fucking deserve it.
Yeah. So like I said, this was the most talked about story, still is, in the entire nation. I also believe this is actually one of the stories that did break through. When you're looking at polling, Trump's numbers are down on immigration, and it's just tanking all over the place for him. In response to this, Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland flew down actually to El Salvador and demanded to speak to Alberto Garcia. He was initially stopped by government officials, saying he was not allowed to be let in, even though he clearly saw other people being let in just fine, but ultimately was allowed to see Alberto Garcia off-site. Senator Van Hollen explained in an interview about how the El Salvadoran government treated the situation during his meeting with Alberto Garcia. They brought him to my hotel. At first, they wanted to stage the meeting by the pool to create this impression and to deceive people, thinking that he was in some kind of tropical paradise when he'd been in one of the worst prisons in El Salvador. During our conversation, the government folks from Bukele instructed the waiters to set 2 taller-looking glasses on our table, making it look like margaritas. I have no idea what's in them because neither of us touched them, but they had a little cherry on top and they had either salt or sugar on the rim. And then if you...
They even made it so that Abrego Garcia's glass was like half full.
I was just gonna say, and
to make it look like he was drinking it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're doing the fascism thing again. We're just looking at
we're like
really
literally
bad at.
collaborating with other fascist dictators to like propagandize and to push this through. Again, this is for the people that are like, you know, fuck them, they deserve it, because they would look at this and just believe it 100%, and they don't give a shit that it's completely wrong and obvious if you looked at it for more than 2 seconds or tried to find the actual explanation from the senator. But, you know, they're never going to do that. They're just going to watch Fox News, and Fox News is going to be like, oh, look, he's relaxing by the side of the pool with a margarita.
Yep. It's insane. Now, I included 2 screenshots of real posts from the White House in response to the situation. You want to kind of explain to the viewers what these posts are?
So this is a headline. It's a mini snapshot of a front page from the New York Times. And the headline is, Senator meets with wrongly deported Maryland man in El Salvador. The White House, I assume that's Twitter account, then posted an edited picture of this that crossed out wrongly and Maryland man, and instead it says Senator meets with deported MS-13 illegal alien, I guess although they kind of crossed out the in too, but whatever, in El Salvador. He's never coming back, or who's never coming back. And then their tweet was, fixed it for you. Oh, and by the way, Senator Chris Van Hollen, he's not coming back. Again, this is
a game.
Joy. This is just, they're so happy to do this shit.
Yeah.
They're ruining this man's life. They destroyed his family.
And they're gleeful about it.
And they're just so happy. This is what gets them off. This is why they do this shit.
Yeah.
And then you also have another picture here, this one from Fox News, another tweet. It's got a picture of Donald Trump meeting. It says, the White House draws a sharp comparison to Donald J. Trump meeting with Patty Morin, an angel mom who lost her daughter at the hands of a legal immigrant, while Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen meets with an alleged M13 gangbanger who was deported to a prison in El Salvador. And a tweet from the White House saying, we are not the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
And dude,
again, white mother matters.
Well, and that's what my whole thing
person,
was.
Fuck him.
I don't know anything about Patty Morin, and I don't really care because
she's an angel mom.
If I was her,
she knows she's being used,
and I was used this way, or the death of my daughter was used this way.
Right. For someone who had nothing to do with it,
I would be pissed. And this is our White House. This is the most powerful group of people in our country. And they're pulling shit like this.
It is just it's like the worst kind of propaganda.
And I didn't include the clip because it was going to be too much. But then Chris Van Hollen then went on Fox News to talk about his time, what happened. And just the stupidest of questions. I highly recommend you check it out. It was just like, so do you know if he's a gang member or not? Well, he wasn't a gang member. But how do you know he wasn't a gang member?
How do you know your mom's not a gang member?
100. It was so infuriating to watch. So good on Chris Van Hollen. Other Democrats have now announced that they're planning on going as well. So they're going to try to bring even more attention to this issue. Is some of it publicity stunts? Yes, I fully understand that, but at least something is being done, and at least we're like actually trying to do something. Other Democrats, though, were more predictably disappointing. Anonymous Democrats actually reached out and told reporters that we shouldn't actually talk about Abrigo Garcia, and instead we should focus on the economy and things that really matter to the American people.
And it's just because they're giving in to, like what I was talking about, what I feel is the majority of Americans who don't give a shit. And, they're like, well, fuck them. They were here illegally, even though that's not even the case in most of these instances. But they don't care. There's like a lot of racist sentiment, but it's not even just that. It's just they are buying into this. You're not even human because you're not me. You don't fit into what I consider to be an American. I don't care if you die.
Yeah.
And I don't care if my government does it.
Correct. And also California Governor Gavin Newsom, and man who's just tanking his political career, also said that this was just a distraction and we shouldn't take the bait.
Yes, human lives, just a distraction. Instead, let's focus on the economy. What really matters.
And to wrap this whole thing up, I need you to all understand this will not be the end. This is going to get so much worse, and we're already seeing evidence of that. I know we're running low on time. I'll kind of run through these really quickly, but it is not just these people who are being harassed and deported. There have been multiple reports of the Trump administration sending U.S. citizens emails saying it is time for you to leave and that we are going to find you and deport you. U.S. citizens have gotten these emails. Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez was detained by ICE, who claimed he was an illegal immigrant, and even after his mom provided his birth certificate, he remained in detention for nearly a week. He is a U.S. citizen, and he was detained for being an illegal immigrant. Murilo Gutierrez was detained by ICE and sent to El Salvador. He had no criminal record and no affiliation to any gang. He was even the target of the ICE raid. A quote from his family: "The officers grabbed him and two other boys right at the entrance of their building. One said, 'No, he's not the one,' like they were looking for someone else. But then the other officer said, 'Take him anyway.'"
Yeah, that sounds like a true Trump warrior right there. That's why that guy is in that position.
Take him anyway.
Yep, I don't give a shit. He's brown, ain't he?
And if you think, oh, it's okay, I'm white, I won't have to deal with any of this, boy, do I have some stories for you. Ksenia Petrova, a Russian scientist who fled to the U.S. after Russia invaded Ukraine because she was protesting. And then after she came to the U.S., she worked as a researcher at Harvard for the past 3 years. While coming back to the United States, she had her visa revoked at customs. And when they threatened to tell Russia about her and where she was, she pleaded with them not to do so because, they may kill her.
Well, they almost certainly will kill her.
Right.
She'll fall out a window.
Right. Which automatically sparked an asylum case. And usually when an asylum case is sparked, people get to come into the country and have court dates. That's the whole nonsense with Republicans are talking about they're doing catch and release and all that blah, blah, blah stuff. That's what this would typically be. But because we live in Trump's America, now that she started an asylum case, she was immediately handcuffed and detained and sent to a Louisiana facility where she's been for 2 months. A Harvard scientist.
Well, they don't give a shit about science anyway.
Of course not. Let's keep going. Multiple Canadian tourists and visa holders were also detained for weeks over the most minuscule bullshit while trying to come over. In Hawaii, 2 German teens who wanted to backpack through the United States were detained when they were questioned why they didn't have a hotel reservation. Even though they said that they were just backpacking through the country, they were still detained, held, and deported back to Japan.
So that's how I can do it. Okay.
And because we're out of time,
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
We haven't even had the chance to talk about how the Trump administration has just been grabbing students with visas, over 1,000 of them, and just disappearing them.
Yeah, especially if you protest the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. You're going to get the black hood.
I may do that for my next episode or something because I feel like we need to talk about that. And just in today, in Milwaukee, this has made local news and is now national news. The FBI has now arrested Milwaukee Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan, who, by the way, I know personally, and has charged her with
Name
two felonies.
dropper.
Yeah, exactly. With 2 felonies for trying to help an undocumented immigrant avoid arrest after he appeared in her courtroom. And I say that just not just to name drop her because I am really cool like that. Take a look at her picture. She is literally like the most stereotypical, quiet, like middle-aged Midwesterner that you'll ever get in your entire life. She is not a radical. She's not some crazy activist judge. She's just a long-time like judicial advocate and a legal nerd. That's all she is. And she is being arrested for doing her job because ICE agents incorrectly came to her courthouse without a warrant and tried to do their thing without having any legal justification for it. And with all of this, reports have shown that the United States is set to lose hundreds of billions of dollars due to lack of tourism.
Yeah, no one's going to want to come here.
Goldman Sachs estimates horrific losses in the coming years because of lack of people coming over. We have projects that will not be done now because people have no demand for it to come to those things. Canadians have just completely stopped coming across the border because they don't trust anything anymore because we are just deporting like 1 out of every like 10 people now. If you make one minor mistake or say one wrong thing at the wrong time, you go to a detention center for God knows how long. And who knows if you're even going to stay in the country or go shipped off to a gulag. Right. We don't know what's happening.
And for the most part, we don't care.
Jason, I told you before we started recording, I hated doing this episode. It's just the stories are bad as it was. And the fact that it just got worse as time went on. And I literally did not have enough time to talk about all of the stories. I'll include more stories and more articles of all the other people who were just innocently detained in the show notes. I don't know if I'm having enough space because there's only a finite amount of space I can add for show notes. There's just so much. There's too much.
I will say, it's very interesting to me when you talk about history and, we've brought up Hitler and World War II and the treatment of the Jews and how we're very much mirroring that now. And a lot of people, when you talk about that, they say, if I was in Nazi Germany, if I was in that situation, I would have killed Hitler.
Oh yeah, you would. Yeah, they would have done the right thing. Or,
right.
Or if they lived like back in like the 1950s, they would have opposed like Jim Crow and things like that.
Let's stick with the killing Hitler point. I just think that's very interesting that a lot of people say they would have done that. trying to say it in a way that's like
that won't
as
get you
legal as possible.
That won't get you sent to a gulag.
Right. Everybody wants to be a Mario, but sometimes you just got to be a Luigi. That's all I'm saying.
So tell everyone you know how bad this is right now. Tell every Trump voting family member you have that this is what's going on in their country. And do not fall for a second that we're doing anything good with this. This is not helping anybody. We are not saving jobs. We're not protecting Americans like Greg Gutfeld thinks we are doing. We're just torturing people that we supposedly find undesirable. We're shipping people away with zero due process, no way to defend themselves.
Yeah, which is completely unconstitutional. We didn't really bring this up, and we're not legal scholars, but the U.S. Constitution does not just provide due process to American citizens. It provides due process to anyone in America.
Correct.
So anyone who thinks like, well, none of our protections apply because you're not a citizen, that is not true at all.
Yeah, if you look at any article in any like thing related to this on like Facebook, just look at the comment section and you'll see a lot of people making that argument. It's really gross.
And even like most of these people aren't even what you would consider illegal immigrants.
No.
There are people that are here
legally,
correctly.
Yeah.
Like doing the right things, doing everything they should. It's just, again, our process takes decades.
Yeah.
To go through. So you have to live for a long time in the country without being a citizen before you complete that process.
Yeah.
And now you have a target on your back.
Yep, exactly. Oh, and I forgot. Another story that we forgot to mention earlier was that there was a guy from Iraq who also did everything the correct way back in the first Trump administration, had asylum or sought asylum, got asylum, and was tried to be like deported by the first administration because they thought he was a terrorist and like a member of ISIS. That didn't work. Joe Biden was fine with it, I guess, for a while. And then now Trump detained him again, and we now sent him to Rwanda. And he is become the first person we have now extradited to Rwanda in the same type of deal that we made with El Salvador. So get ready to see more people sent to Rwanda as well. It's great. Everything's great. Are we great yet?
Well, as long as we don't call them concentration camps.
I'm going to call them concentration camps because they're concentration camps by definition. Oh, I hate this. I have nothing more to talk about, and I'm exhausted.
See you in 2 weeks.
Goodbye, everybody. Don't get sent to a gulag. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to get in contact with us, you can find us on Blue Sky at ThinkProPod, or you can reach out to us via email at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.
I was going to bring up the J.D. Vance killing the Pope, but I feel like we missed that in the opening.
Oh, we could just scream it right now. Just edit it. J.D. Vance killed the Pope and go right back to it.
I bet the Pope walked in on him fucking a couch in the Vatican. Because if you're J.D. Vance, I mean, that's like a once in a lifetime. You were never going to get another chance to fuck that couch.
I bet that's probably what happened, because did you see his face? Like the Pope's face?
He looked like a man who just saw J.D. Vance fucking his couch.
Exactly. He looked scarred for life for what little bit he had left.
Right. Yeah. There's no way his heart could take that. So yeah, 100% J.D. Vance killed the Pope because the Pope walked in on him fucking his couch.
There you go.
Facts.
Logic. Couches.
I don't want you to know. He put his dick in the couch. Send me money. Buy my supplements.
I'm not funny. I'm just not funny. I have so many ideas in my head and it just comes out not funny.
That's like the tagline for our show.